Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Anthony Cosenza with the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast coming at you live once again. Also, obviously, a contributor at Cincy Jungle. I'm going to be joined by my usual co-host, Scott Schultz. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks so much for your continued support of this program. We've got a lot on tap, even though the Bengals are 0-2, and things are not really looking up at the moment for the team. I guess you could say there was slight signs of improvement last week. About that, we're going to try and make this a little bit of an abbreviated show. And to Royal Flush, no, Ken Zampese will not be our special guest down the road once he kind of lets the dust settle a little bit. Do me a favor, though, for those of you who are watching live, we've had a couple of issues and complaints of late with some audio, and unfortunately some of that is on our end, some of that is on Google Hangouts where we record this program live. So if there are some issues whether it's the audio is getting fuzzy or something like that, let me know. We'll try and remedy that in the middle of the show, so you don't have to wade through some of that stuff. And obviously those of you who are watching live don't have to, you don't have to listen to some static and all that kind of stuff. Our apologies on that. We're in the middle of upgrading some equipment. And like I said, Google Hangouts sometimes isn't the most user-friendly thing. Internet connection speeds and, the fact that Scott and I and others talk across the country, sometimes technology has its moments. So we apologize for that. Please continue to keep listening to us. We hope you enjoy the program regardless of a couple of those news we've had to our attention. Again, my co-host Scott Schultz is going to join me in just a minute here. What we're going to talk about, we're going to go briefly over the Texans game and just some that's going to feed into a conversation to Bill Lazor's promotion to offensive coordinator. We're going to talk about preview the Packers game, and then we're going to try and get to some fan questions if we have time. We already have a couple of things queued up to us, so we're going to try and get this on the air as well, Cincy Jungle comment stream, or in our live YouTube chat with other Bengals fans. Leave them there. We're scanning there, seeing if there's some good ones we want to answer on the air. So feel free to leave those. Again, if there is an issue with the audio or anything like that, issues with the audio, let us know. We'll try and reset, reboot, and get things in order. But that being said, appreciate some of you who are different time than usual when we record. Let's just dive right into the Texans game briefly. Obviously, the offense struggled. Obviously, the offensive play calling was an issue. Andy Dalton didn't turn the ball over this week, which was nice to see, but some of his receivers had trouble getting open at times. The protection, once again, was lousy. And really, even his best play of the game, really, one throw to Alex Erickson for 37 yards, and then another throw to A.J. Green that was basically just a jump ball down the middle of the field, underthrown. Green makes a nice play. I don't want to go too far into the X's and O's and every little thing with this game, and I think for the most part now, especially with the new offense, a little bit of the same thing in terms of film study and all of that stuff. So I don't want to go too far into it, but there's issues that obviously keep popping up with this team, and unfortunately, it hasn't gotten better. Things haven't really been the same since that was, whether you want to call that a hangover, whether you want to call it just a fact of attrition in terms of free agency and all of that. It's probably this team is just not the same. They don't look confident. They don't look like they know what they're doing, especially on the ball. It was refreshing on the positive side to see Adam Jones come back and play a pretty decent game. He was beat a couple of times on defense. Did make Deshaun Watson only threw, I believe, for 125 yards. So he and the defense did their job. In 2 weeks, with Bengals times and 2 more turnovers on downs. The Bengals turned it over 6 times and then 2 more turnovers down, letting up 16.5 points per game on defense. Now, that's pretty good when you think about all things considered. Obviously, they are at home. When you let up 16.5 points a game at home, usually you're kind of expected to win. And just isn't doing its part. Randy Bullock had 3 for 3, a 3 for 3 night on field goals, so that was good to see. If he wasn't doing his part either, that just kind of adds fuel to the fire. And then obviously, the fact that the Bengals lost to the Texans again, the fact that the Bengals lost on primetime again, the fact that they lost to the Texans on primetime again, all of that just kind of spells, a lack of preparation. Sure, there are obvious matchup issues, and that's just kind of how sometimes it goes with playing a certain team. Sometimes you just don't match up well against a certain team, whether it's their scheme, their personnel, what have you. So that was very disappointing again. And then obviously the aftermath, not really the Zampese thing. We'll talk more a bit, but more about the AJ Green going off about, we need to get the ball in the hands of Baker Patrick saying we suck. Carlos Dunlap making some comments. Tyler Boyd now this week after he was mysteriously benched on Ross after his fumble. He kind of he alluded to the fact that Ken Zampese really complicated things and really made sure that guys were micromanaged, and that maybe wasn't the case with previous coordinators. Each player responds a different way to a coach. It just kind of depends. But those are obviously some of the takeaways, and Greg L took the words out of my mouth, and so did the Bullfrog 24, held them to 13 points without Vontez. Great. Greg L says defense is good even without Vontez. So yeah, at least they get him back at some point. After this game coming up, and then stout than they've been. But they're getting to the passer. They're holding points. Geno Atkins is playing some of the best ball. So they played in the offense that has been the Achilles heel so far in these first 2 games. And 9 points in the first 2 games. I believe, joined by my co-host, Scott Schulte, who is hopefully keeping his keyboard dry with no paint on his thing, taking some housework and painting and stuff. Scott, are you there?
Yes.
How are you, sir?
Good. I have a little paint on my hands. Other than that, I'm doing pretty good. Still some.
That's what I was saying. Don't get that keyboard dirty, my friend. Hopefully you. I hope you didn't. I hope you didn't watch this game actually on Thursday night. Maybe you did, but pretty disappointing. I just want to briefly get some of your thoughts and takeaways, and then we'll talk about the Ken Zampese Bill Lazor thing from there. But what away from this game? What were some of your biggest disappointments coming from this game?
I guess the biggest positive, and it was something that you've already mentioned, is the defense. For 2 straight weeks they've done very well. Granted, they've been playing some very bad offenses, but that being said, it's still nice to see them holding their own. Especially, you look at the first game where they had the 5 turnovers. They're given bad field position. They're constantly on the field, yet they do a pretty good job. This time around, they did very well. I was kind of curious. If you take out 2 passes, the Macklin touchdown from week 1 and the pass to Hopkins on Thursday, minus those 2 passes, which I think are like a 30 and a 40-yarder, they're averaging giving up less than 100 yards per game passing. So clearly they're doing something right. And you could say, well, it's because they're playing Flacco and Watson, but Flacco's a guy who does have a bunch of 300 passing games under his belt. Watson was taken the first round for a reason. So you figure, it's not like they're facing Achilles Smith or anyone. So I think that's very encouraging. And And I think their encouraging thing was the young guys, when they do let them play, I think we'd probably argue whether they let them play enough. But when they do let them in, the guys like Lawson and Smith and Willis, they've been doing a pretty good job of doing what we expected them to do, what we've done in OTAs, what they've done in training camp. That these guys look like pass rushers, that the ones we expected them to be. So I don't really have anything positive to say about the offense other than it was just, yeah. I mean, there's just really nothing you can say about that. And I think it's probably been, beat to a pulp several times over on the Cincy Jungle site that there's just a lot of struggles on that side. And I'm sure we'll hit on that a little more when we talk about Bill Lazor. But so I just want to focus on the defense. I was happy to see they looked very good, and I was happy to see Randy Bullock made 3 kicks. I've, this podcast I've gone over several times saying I, prefer Elliott over Bullock. Bullock was 3 for 3, and Elliott missed a kick for the Eagles. So perhaps they did make the right decision.
Yeah, and I mean, they're doom and gloom as things seem at this point, and as disappointing as things seem at this point, there actually is a lot of positives. The defense, the special teams, certain players are playing very well. I mean, and I said it before, the defense and the special teams have kept this team in games. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens in the first week did nothing except for wait for the Bengals to make mistakes. They didn't do anything special. They didn't do anything great. They had one play where a cornerback, Jeremy Maclin, took a touchdown, but the cornerback, Darquez Dennard, was kind of picked on the play, and he couldn't really cover his man. And, I mean, touchdowns are going to happen. That's just kind of what happens. But like I said, when you give up 33 total points, when your offense is giving the ball away a combined 6 times and then 2 on downs, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And, they've had a number of good returns on special teams, which puts the offense in good field position, and they're not doing anything with it. What do you make of this? Is kind of segueing into the Bill Lazor, Peasy firing. What do you make of AJ Green's post-game comments on Thursday about getting the ball in the playmakers' hands? I think a lot of this stuff and potentially some of the news about.
When I hear that from someone like Green, because Green isn't a guy who talks a whole lot as far as, he's not one of these diva types. He's not an Odell Beckham or one of these guys. So when he says something, I think it carries a lot of weight because he feels he has something he needs to say. So to me, just the fact he said anything kind of speaks volumes. And then you look at what he said, and I think there's 2 ways to interpret it. I think one way folks have interpreted it as well, AJ saying, get me the ball. I didn't quite take it that way. I took it more, this team supposedly has a lot of good talent. They have, Eifert, who's, possibly, when he's healthy, he could be an all-pro tight end. He, at least as a receiver, maybe not as a blocker. He's very good. Obviously, the things we've seen in Joe Mixon in training camp preseason, he looks like the best running back. But yeah, he's not getting a lot of touches. Obviously, if Tyler Boyd is supposed to be, this second-year player, second-round pick, you would expect to see him at least playing. You'd expect to see John Ross get more than 1 carry or 1 reception and not benched right away because he does have a fumble. And so I look at it as more not so much get me the ball, but we have these guys, get them the ball and not do – I think, for example, in week 2, Alex Erickson had more targets than Eifert has had the whole year. That's not really the breakdown you want to have. You don't want to have, your 5th string wide receiver getting, more looks than your supposedly great tight end. That, there's a disparity that's there. And to me, that's what the comment seems to be speaking to is we have these good guys and we have other guys. Get all these good guys the ball, which obviously is me, AJ Green. It's also, Eifert, LaFell, Ross, Boyd. We have these guys. Someone getting them the ball, and then when we're running the ball, let's see. And I think Mixon is leading the team in rushes. Granted, a lot of those are in week 2, late in the game, so we kind of build up some meaningless rushes at that point. But to me, it's not so much me. It's all about me, but it's about we have these good guys. please get them the ball. Let's not repeat what I think it was when they won the games when they played Houston in the playoffs and they got beat. And I think in the first half they'd targeted Adrian Green 0 times. And so, yeah, I'm just hoping it's that they take that lesson. Obviously, you hope Lazor finds a way to get the balls to the people who should have these balls, which is, that's why you have them on the teams, because you want the ball in their hand.
Yep, and it's a double-edged sword, really, when you have that many weapons, because there's only so many footballs and so many around on it, many talented guys. But I mean, you've drafted these guys for a reason. You supposedly have, even though you may go this best player available type of strategy in the draft, you brought these guys in for a reason. So you would hope that when you're drafting them, how you use them. Now, that vision may never fully come to fruition. You may have to deviate from that a little bit, but used well last year, I thought, and then all of a sudden this year he disappears. You mentioned the disparity between the looks for Eifert and Erickson. To Erickson's credit, he's made a lot of plays already this year. Now, it hasn't really done much on the scoreboard, but when they've called his number, he's actually played pretty well on offense, on special teams. I mean, he's made some plays already this year, but you're correct. Just the benching of Boyd and Ross last week really made me question the team did as well, because Ken Zampese, just 18 games into being the team's offensive coordinator, was let go after Thursday night by Bill Lazor, the quarterback's coach. I've got a couple of questions here, Scott, for you, and I'm really curious to know about this. Number one, the offense is mightily struggling right now, and Zampese was having trouble getting the ball to certain targets. Andy Dalton's coming off a 4,000-yard passing season with a lot of guys injured last year. And, yes, the team is struggling big time these first two games. Was the hook pulled, and this may not be a popular question, but it's one that needs to be asked. I mean, was the hook pulled too early on Zampese, or do you think it was like, hey, it's time?
I'd say it was definitely time. I mean, we were saying this last year. The offense was stagnant last year. It was flat. They seemed to have trouble getting in sync. It looked nothing like the offense from 2 years ago. It just seemed like, for whatever reason, Ken Zampese's offense just wasn't able to put it together. And then you see the first two games this year, the thought is, okay, we have A.J. Green back. He was out. We have Eifert back. He was out. We have this Joe Mixon guy. And they regress and they get worse. So you take an offense that was pretty good in 2015. They were one of the top scoring, offenses in the league. They go to 2016, put a new offensive coordinator in who had never done it before. He struggled. You can, he's new at this. He's never done this. He's struggled. Some of the guys got hurt. We'll chalk that up. Come 2017, now we have everyone back. He's had a year to figure out what to do. Now we're going to be pretty explosive. And it just, it went the wrong direction. And I assume the Bengals saw that and said, now, wait a second. We were expecting, last year to be the learning year, this year to be the year you put it together, not last year's the learning year and this year's the year, you get even worse at it. So I think they made the right decision, and I don't think it's enough of a decision. I think there's more that needs to be done, but at least it was something that I think needed to be done last year. And at least and to their credit, they said, we're going to give him more in a year. We want to, he was very new at this. We've lost and that's the other thing too. This team has lost a lot of coaches. They have a lot of brain drain over the past 5-6 years. A number of head coaches from this team: Jay Gruden, Hugh Jackson, Mike Zimmer, Vance Joseph. And then a lot of the assistants, Hayes and some of the others who have disappeared and gone other carrier. And these, they've had a lot of guys leave. And at some point, you can't lose so many people and then just replenish. I mean, they talk about Alabama, Ohio State, USC schools. They just every year you lose. These 5 first-round picks. You just plug them back in. Well, the schools don't do it every single year. Eventually, they get to a point where we've just lost so much. We have that down year or two, and it almost feels like that's happened with the Bengals and the coaches. They've just lost so many good coaches over the past, 5-6 years. They just don't have the guys in place to replenish that. And obviously you hope they can fix that, but until they do, you look on the field and you see what's happening.
Yep. And just real quickly to backtrack, just a tiny bit with you in the YouTube chat saying AJ Green is a great guy, plays with a lot of heart, and has never been a diva. If he's pissed off, yeah, we have a serious problem that needs. Maybe that was obviously maybe one of the small things that played into the corner. The reason I kind of asked that question about Zampese, and I do agree made, and I do agree with you as well that more changes probably need to be made, whether it's scheme, more coaching turnover, potential personnel changes and philosophy changes, that sort of thing. But I do just, 18, with all the talk about some of the stuff that's, Marvin Lewis may have been facing a quote unquote mutiny after this game. I just wonder if he was kind of a scapegoat, maybe a needed scapegoat, but maybe he was a scapegoat for this team, this year. Just a question there. Now, what do you think Bill Lazor? And I don't know if you've read some of the stuff from Joe Goodberry, who's been on this program on Twitter, but he's apparently looked at some stuff with Lazor when he was with the Miami Dolphins and liked what he saw there. But aside from everything and get the ball to the playmakers, what are some of the biggest corrections you see that needs to be made with the scheme? And I think this team needs to do in order to be successful on that side of the ball. Again, if the defense and the special teams plays at or near they've been playing in these first two games, and the offense steps it up even a bit to quite a bit, I think we're looking at a completely different team. So what does Lazor need to do with the offense, in your opinion? What are like his top three things he needs to do in order to kind of right the ship on that side of the ball?
Well, first I'll say to answer the question about scapegoat, without a doubt, I think Zampese was a scapegoat. And replacing him, I really don't see a lot changing. It's the same basic offense, the same plays. You can call them in a different order. You can tweak a few things, but you pretty much have your offense, installed at this point. And yeah, it was a necessary scapegoat, I guess. But yeah, you need to see more happen. If there's going to be a mutiny, okay, the captain's not very good. We're having a mutiny, so the captain decides to push the first officer overboard. That's nice, but ultimately, it doesn't solve the problem. So that being said, what can this new first officer do? I guess if I was him, a couple things. The first thing I'd like to do is try to teach Andy Dalton how to, I guess, read post-snap defense. Some of the plays, you can't really fix accuracy as an offensive coordinator. So I guess, I would just look at every pass Dalton has made, basically pre-snap, post-snap. What was the play that was called? What's the defense? What is the read? What is he reading beforehand? What is he doing afterhand? Why is his ball that he's passing not going anywhere near where it's supposed to be? Is it receivers? Is it him? Is it a bad read? Is it miscommunication? Is it just, a bad arm, inaccurate? First thing I'd try to figure out is what in the heck is happening with these passes that aren't going anywhere near where they're supposed to be going. Why are all these deep balls going nowhere near the receivers? Why are, the plays where, the defense shows you one thing and then, you have the snap. And so obviously this is the hot read and you throw it over here in double coverage. And, those kind of things that you're just like, to figure out what is happening with these passes and get that fixed. I think that's got to be the most important thing. And people have talked about the pass protection. And yeah, you go back and watch it. It's not great, but it's not horrible. I don't think it's that horrible. I think, somewhat that's kind of a scapegoat too. Because I think if you put Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning behind this offensive line, they wouldn't have the same struggles. Yeah, they'd have to move, but they're guys who can, they feel the pressure. They always, have the knack for going the right direction. The pressure's coming from here. They instinctively go, against it. They always find that open spot in the blocking. And it might just be they play the game at a higher level and they not just see what's happening, defensively covering the pass, but also at the rush. And they know when the pressure comes, where to step up, how to avoid it. Or obviously someone like Aaron Rodgers, he could just run and get away from it. But I guess those would be the biggest things I'd look at I guess that'd be the first one, without a doubt. It's fixing the passing game, figuring out what is happening with these passes, where are they going, what is Dalton doing? Is it, like that one player said, is it too complicated? Are the people just, is he just regressing? And I mean, it could be something like a Mark Bulger situation where he was an adequate quarterback. He had good weapons around him when he took over for Kurt Warner in St. Louis. He had a couple good years, was never great. And then, after he'd been in the league 6-7 years, he just kind of regressed and dropped out of the league. And I don't know if Dalton's doing that. He's 30 now. I mean, we usually don't talk about quarterbacks hitting a plateau when they hit 30 like running backs do, but it could just be Dalton has just, peaked and is dropping as far as his production and performance. So that's number one. So he has to figure it out. Number two for me, I'd say pick a running back and go with him. I mean, I know you can kind of rotate him in and out to a degree, but at some point that you have to pick a guy, you have to establish some sort of consistency, give these guys a chance to feel the defense, to feel the blocking, to get in that game rhythm and do what you have them to do. You have three of them. I think that's too many. You have to make a decision and go with it.
To that point, Scott, in the Cincy Jungle comment thread, we have Darkest Deity asking a new coordinator to use Mixon as the main running back. Is he the guy that, I mean, he obviously has, I would say at this point, based on what we know from Hill and what we know from Giovanni Bernard, Mixon has the most upside, I think, at this point. I still think Giovanni Bernard has a significant role in this offense. He's what you want to use him for primarily, but he is a decent pass protector, especially for a guy with his size. And obviously he's very exciting in the passing game, can run the ball pretty well also. So I think, passing game, all that stuff, he has a role. But do you think Lazor is going to say, you know what, first things first, based on what you're saying his priority should be, Mixon's the guy and we're committing to 15 to 20 touches plus a game, or is it still going to be by committee, you think?
I think, at this point, I think you have to say it's Mixon. I mean, even if you don't like Mixon, just the fact that Hill's probably going at the end of the year because you're not running, this three-headed system's kind of silly. He's going to go somewhere, probably get a little more money, be a starter. So he's out the door. You have nothing to prove by continuing to put him out there. You know what you're getting. He's, other than that half of 1 year, he's, 3-yard in a cloud of dust kind of runner. He's a guy who generally isn't going to create if he doesn't have the blocking. We don't have the blocking. You have Giovanni Bernard locked up for a few years. You have obviously Mixon locked up for a few years. So let's see what we have going forward. And those, like you mentioned with Bernard and, and Mixon, those are your two guys after this year. You're already 0-2. There's at this point, you've got to do something. There's no reason to keep, putting guys out there who there's no reason to have, why would you put Hill out there unless you're afraid Mixon's getting hurt? And if you're afraid he's getting hurt, then you shouldn't be playing football. And so, yeah, I think you've got to commit. You've got to put Mixon out there a dozen plus times and say, he is our guy. We're going to see what we have. He is our future.
I mean, you and I have talked about this on this program before. Why draft guys that have certain strengths if you're not going to play them because you're afraid they're going to get injured in the depth chart, but you still want to get the ball in their hands, get creative, use them on special teams, do what you can to get these exciting guys the football. So obviously you had said fix the passing game and commit to a running back one way or the other. Obviously with the passing game, for me, listen, I really liked yours, Scott. In terms, I'm going to go a little more specific in terms of fixing the passing game. Andy Dalton has a guy when he finds an early rhythm and he completes the easy passes early on, the screens, the slants, the quick passes, even does a couple of read options to get some yards and first downs. These are the types of plays that build a quarterback's confidence, and it builds an offensive line's confidence. So, and however it may need to look because of the struggles of the offensive line, I think Bill Lazor needs to come up with some plan that gets Andy Dalton into a rhythm early. That has not happened this year. Andy Dalton has looked skittish. Andy Dalton has not looked like the same guy we've seen over the past 2 years, 2015, 2016, when he's made a lot of good throws. And I think, I don't know if it's getting too cute. I don't know if it means things were getting too complicated under Zampese. But I think you need to get the ball into some reliable guys' hands, and a guy like AJ Green who's upset about things right now, get him the ball early and often. Don't force it. Don't make bad throws, but create a handful of plays early on that are confidence builders, that can move the sticks. And even if it's getting an early field goal, I know everybody wants to score a touchdown right now. We're all dying to see one this year. I know that, but you kind of got to do small building blocks right now. I don't think the expectation for Lazor should be to come in and all of a sudden the Bengals put 40 on the Packers this week. That's just not realistic. Could it happen? I guess, but it's just not really realistic. I think, we got to kind of think about building blocks here. And to me, Dalton has always been a rhythm, get confidence type of quarterback. And then he really, opens things up. The defense kind of backs on its heels a little bit. And then you can mix in the run plays and all of that. So I think for me, getting Dalton confident and in a rhythm early is a big thing. And then to your point as well, I'm pointing more to the offensive line. This is obviously in a lot of different ways. It's also been hit by a couple of injuries. Trey Hopkins is sitting once again this week. The team's starting right guard, kind of interesting. We still haven't seen, much of Andre Smith and that situation. Whether it's a reshuffling and getting other guys in there and whoever else, maybe the Bengals re-signed J.J. Dillman on the practice squad. Maybe he's a guy you promote at some point and look at whether it's an L to make things work or really dumbing down the playbook and really doing things to play to this offensive line strength. Dumbing down the playbook for the offensive line was one. It was the other one. Obviously, I talked about Andy Dalton being a rhythm passer and getting him confidence. Dumbing down the playbook, maybe shortening it a little bit, and then building from there as maybe more success happens. This offensive line does have some strengths, has a lot of weaknesses, but they can do some things. And I think getting a formula for the right plays is probably the biggest thing for Bill Lazor as he takes over the offensive coordinator job. And again, I apologize that we cut out for a brief moment of time. Thank you for those of you who let me know and stuck around. Now, this team heads to Green Bay, and I think that this is probably one of their most difficult games on their schedule. And I mean, they're 0-2. They've switched offensive coordinators. They have they're angry. They're also in disarray. Obviously, getting a win would be gigantic. And one thing that does play in Marvin Lewis's favor is that he is 3-0 in his career as Bengals head coach against the Packers, including 2 against Aaron Rodgers, which is very interesting. So, what do you expect out of this one? Is this something where we should just really expect the worst, hope for the best? Or is this something where, now the Bengals have a mini bye week, the extended break after the Thursday night football game, and now they may have a little more time to prepare with a new coordinator, and this could be a little bit closer of a game, and maybe they can sneak one.
I think anything's possible, especially if you look at the last time these two teams played. I think the Packers were up by like 20 points or 17 points going into the end of the third quarter, and then the Bengals had this huge run where they came back and scored 17, 20, whatever, unanswered points late in the game, capped off with I think it was a Jonathan Franklin fumble that Reggie Nelson scooped up and ran it back for a touchdown. It was like a 4th and 1, and the Packers were, I think, driving to either take the lead or seal the victory. And so, anything's possible. Granted, that was a home game, but, anything is possible. And that being said, I think just, the struggles this team's had, I don't expect Lazor to work miracles overnight. So I think the rational person is probably, even a Bengals fan's probably assuming that, this is probably a loss. I think most fans before the season started figured we're going to win the first game, we're going to win the second game, and then we'll lose in Green Bay. We'll be 2-1. That's good. So I think the reasons why people expected us to lose in Green Bay, 3 weeks ago, probably are more or less the same reasons why they would think we're going to lose, why we could lose this time. And if anything, it could be worse because oh, by the way, not only do they still have Aaron Rodgers, they still have this great offense, and their defense actually looks halfway decent, but now all of a sudden we can't see them score a touchdown.
Yeah, and you would think, based on personnel and what they kind of like to do, signed Mohamed Sanu from the Bengals, you would think with the amount of skill position, because the Atlanta Falcons, they built their offensive lineup a bit, and it's a few seasons ago, but they still aren't known as one of the best offensive lines there are. They have a quarterback that is probably top 10 in the league, and they've got a lot of weapons. They've got their version of AJ Green, Julio Jones. They've got Mohamed Sanu. They've got a couple of good running backs. Would be able to do a lot of these same things on offense, even with some offensive line limitations that the Falcons were able to do against Green Bay on Sunday. It's not a totally short week, but it is a little shorter than usual for Green Bay. And, you look at some of the people in the YouTube chat, says only way they win is if they steal a bad Aaron Rodgers game and win with a last-second field goal. We had Christopher Francis saying Vegas says bet on Bengals to cover, expecting a close game, probably Green Bay win, but still expect it maybe to be a little closer than we think. Before we kind of get into a couple other little things with this game, what do you think is the biggest key for the Bengals to potentially sneak one out? Aside from Aaron Rodgers playing poorly or something like that, what do the Bengals specifically need to do? One of their top one or two keys that you think should get them a victory if they were able to achieve it. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Everything I said was golden. Now I'm just going to give the crappy version.
Now it's all blown to hell. Yep.
Basically, I would say pressure and contain on Aaron Rodgers is the one single key to winning this game, because their defense is decent, but it's a defense you can score on. Obviously, a team that scored zero touchdowns, maybe not, but it's a defense we can get some points on. But that being said, we have to stop that offense. You look at their offense this year; Aaron Rodgers is averaging 46 pass attempts a game. He's carrying their offense. They're struggling running the ball. They're averaging like 3.3 yards a carry. Ty Montgomery, the converted receiver, was great last year. This year he does have a lot of touchdowns, a lot of receiving yards, but they just can't move the ball on the ground. And I think our defense is good enough that we can stop a running game. We've done it for 2 weeks. We can stop a running game that can't run. So, but the big thing is, can you stop this team that's going to throw, has no fear of throwing the ball 40, 50 times? And if we can get pressure on him, which hopefully would keep guys like Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb from getting you deep, force him on short stuff like Martellus Bennett, who apparently has become a drop factory of late. Force things short and underneath where you're not giving up the big play. And then when you do get pressure, when we have guys like Geno Atkins blowing through there, and if we're playing, Willis and Lawson and Dunlap coming in, that hopefully it's not one of these things where, okay, you get that pressure and then you leave a lane wide open and, Rodgers runs for 10 yards, gets a first down. So if you can pressure and contain, I know it's easier said than done. Obviously, every team wants to do that. But to me, that'd be the single biggest key. It's, can you put pressure on him, and can you contain him and keep him from scrambling when you break the pocket down? And not give him that easy lane to run.
Yep. And there's a lot of people in the YouTube chat that agree with you, James Napke. I'm looking at a bunch of people that said, hey, yeah, pressuring Rodgers, all of that. You mentioned Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. Both those guys are battling some injuries. I think Nelson returned to practice today, but they're facing injuries. Brian Bulaga, their right tackle, not played, a pretty severe ankle injury in the preseason. Did not need surgery on it, but they're he's essentially been out for about a month now. We're not really sure what's going on, if he's going to play this week, or if backup Kyle Murphy, who started the first two games, is going to be starting there. We'll see. I love use it as my key, and it's from our good friend Royal Flush 513. Third down conversions. I love that. That goes two ways. The Bengals on defense have been excellent in getting off the field in third downs. They haven't been great in getting turnovers or anything like that, but they've been great at getting off the field on third down, and the offense has been awful in converting third down. So if the defense can keep doing what they're doing, especially against Aaron Rodgers and his weapons, and the Bengals can do more on third down on offense, I think this game can be close. Randy, the Bengals need to play a near perfect game, I think, just because they're on the road, they're playing Aaron Rodgers, and it's just a very tough game. So I think the Bengals need to play a very, very sound game in all three phases. And I know it's cliche, but they need to do that. We're running a little low on time. So Scott, what is your score prediction? Kind of start to get in on this game.
I'm gonna, we have a weekly Bengals pick 'em where all the contributors pick who they think's gonna win all the games. In 2 years, is the first time I picked against the Bengals, just because for many reasons. I mean, the struggles, the offense, playing on the road, a team place is hard to play, etc. So I'm picking the Packers to win, which isn't so bad. It's a nice small market, friendly, place, good people, the whole thing with. But that being said, I am picking them to win. I think we keep, them from exploding a ton of points on us. I think we do have a good defense. The Packers offense doesn't seem like it's the same offense they've had in years past. They're not putting 30, 40 points up against people. I think we probably hold them to something like 17. I think we finally score that touchdown. I'm not sure how we're going to do it. It's probably going to be someone we're not expecting, like a Tyler Boyd reverse, or I don't know, something bizarre that, you would expect. It's going to be Hill up the gut, or, Eifert or Green. I think it's going to be something, just some odd, unexpected touchdown. But we'll finally get one in. So I'm going to say it's probably 17-10. I think a little closer than people expect, but one of those games where we're making progress, steps in the right direction, but just not enough to get over the hump.
I totally feel you. Scott, this game is on my birthday. This game is being played on my birthday. And if the Bengals are going to turn around their season, if they're going to go to the playoffs, it isn't, my friend. Because it's my birthday, and because it's kind of like, if I pick them right now, I'll say 24-23 Bengals. And I picked every other time, if I was to pick for money, if I was to pick for whatever, I would pick the Packers hands down. But I will go 24-23. It's my birthday, September 24th, 24 magic number. Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Sounds good. Crazy? No. I mean, anything's possible. And, I mean, that's why they play this game every week. I mean, how many people, in our, like, going back to that Cincy Jungle Pick'em thing that we post on the Cincy Jungle website, the first week, the average person got like 9 and 7. I mean, there's a lot. Everyone missed the New England game. There were a couple other games everyone missed because, anything can happen in a given week. And that's what makes the NFL with so much parity, because of the, with the free agency and with the salary cap and, the draft and different things. I mean, granted, some teams are better than others, but it can happen. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, the Packers aren't, your typical, this is it's not a 12-win, dominant Packer team. The Bengals team is better than an 0-2, fewest points in the league team. So, yeah, I'd say there's a chance. If I were putting money on it, I don't think I would put the house on that pick, but it's something that I could see. I don't know what the odds are, but it's definitely possible.
I'm being told happy 21st birthday in the YouTube chat, so I'll take that. I wish that was the case, but appreciate it anyway. Scott, we're going to get to a couple of fan questions. I want to ask you one specifically before you bail, if you don't mind. By the way, in case you're new to this program, you can check us out on Cincy Jungle on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on YouTube. You can join us live every week. Usually we record Wednesday nights. Sometimes the schedule differs, whether the Bengals play on Thursday Night Football or, sometimes some personal things come up with Scott and I, so we try and make do. But I'm on YouTube and at Cincy Jungle if you can. Download the program on iTunes, on SoundCloud, on YouTube, or at Cincy Jungle. And you can get in touch with the show at Bengals OBI and the OB Insider at gmail.com. Scott, before you bounce out, I believe it's from Kevin Evans for Cincy Jungle comment thread, and I believe Kevin and Keith Evans are the twins who are from the Bahamas, if I remember correctly. If Dalton struggles again in Green Bay, if we're seeing turnovers, if we're seeing a lack of first downs, if we're seeing just no points, does Marvin Lewis, after pulling kind of the quick hook on Zampese this week, does Marvin Lewis do the same with Andy Dalton and bring in McCarron?
I'm going to give quick, if they are from the Bahamas, I hope they're doing okay because I think there's a hurricane pounding them right now. So hopefully
I think
they're doing fine. And if they are, and if they're able to listen to us, I'm going to say there's no way he pulls Dalton just because he is an old school guy, a veteran guy. I mean, how many times have we seen him stick with guys? I mean, Mike Nugent, he had to miss so many kicks before they finally got rid of him last year. You can go on and on with the guys like Pecco and Gathers and, Malaluga and guys who you saw where they had backups who were infinitely better. And the guys in the field just weren't getting it done. He continued to stick with them. This case, I don't know if they think McCarron's better. I don't know who thinks. I mean, obviously some people in the media think he's better, but if our teams thought he was better, I think we would have gotten an offer for him that we couldn't refuse. We haven't because, there was a reason the guy was drafted late in the draft and was, 5th, 6th round pick. So I think the Bengals would say, even if Dalton struggled mightily, I don't think they feel they have a guy that they could plug in and all of a sudden he would be, the savior. It's not like we have Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady sitting there waiting to replace, Brett Favre and Drew Bledsoe. Maybe we do. I don't know if we do. I mean, even going back to training camp, all the talk was, Driscoll was out playing McCarron, and McCarron didn't look that good. And so now all of a sudden we're expecting him to come in and, replace Dalton, who granted is struggling, and I think short of an injury, Lewis and Dalton are stuck at the hip and they're going to stick it out. And I fully expect one of them to be going next year. Probably not the other one, but I think they're riding out this year together.
I agree, and I think the only way we see McCarron is towards the middle or end of the year. If this season gets absolutely out of control, the offense continues to struggle, then I think the Bengals would make the change to A.J. McCarron that Andy Dalton is in the last year of a team contract extension he signed a couple of years ago. He still has a couple more years on it, but it's kind of an opt-out of sorts after this season to be able to do that. And if he struggles, the agent, and if he struggles throughout the first portion of the season, first half of the season, then you bring in A.J. McCarron. It's kind of like, well, look, we've seen what we have from Dalton. We know what he's done with this team. Some good things, some bad things. We don't fully know what we have with McCarron. What's going on with the head coach because he's in the last year of his contract as well. So maybe this then becomes some sort of audition for McCarron if Dalton falters through the first half of the season. I think this question is, like you and I said, I think it's a bit more down the road in terms of if the Bengals turn to McCarron. I think they think that they can turn things around after this 0-2 start, get competitive, potentially make a playoff push with all the talent they do have. But that remains to be seen. I don't want to sit here and say the Bengals, we're talking about 1-7 and now McCarron's in. Let that happen when it happens. I don't think it's happening this week. I just don't. I think the Bengals would really have to struggle games in order for that to take place, and then make a decision from there.
Before I vanish, one thing I want to add to what you just said. I think if I was in that situation, I'd say let's play Driscoll instead. I mean, he has a chance to return on IR. I think he's on the IR return list. So if you're 1-7 or whatever at that point, and season's kind of shot, Dalton's having a horrible year, McCarron could be a free agent. He could be gone. I don't know if anyone. Apparently, no one seems to know when this guy's ever going to be a free agent. At some point, he's going to be a free agent. It could be this year. I don't know. Could be when your kid's 18. Who knows? At some point, this guy's going to be a free agent. So he's probably going to leave. He said that, how many times he said he wants to go somewhere where he'll have a chance. He wants to go somewhere where he'll have a chance. So you can get the impression he's out the door. So if you put him in, he's just auditioning to get a contract somewhere else. So why not, you have Driscoll. Why not play him? And if he looks horrible, and if you are really 1-7, 1-8, whatever, okay, you have a high pick next year. Use that on one of these, supposed great quarterbacks coming out in the draft. And if Driscoll looks good, then you're like, cool, we may have our, quarterback of the future. Anyway, I'll just
a lot of decisions.
I do have to run.
Yep, I got you, man. Appreciate it, and we'll see you next episode. Thanks, Scotty.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, interesting stuff, and obviously that's a road that is going to be crossed when we get there. Set in stone yet. There's a lot of stuff going on about Dalton and AJ McCarron. I just find it kind of interesting, and again, this is another topic for another time. I just find it kind of interesting that the Bengals big offers similar to McCarron in terms of draft collateral, which they very much covet. They balked at that this offseason, and now they're struggling with games, and people are calling for AJ McCarron. So I don't know. I wish Andy Dalton around. I think he will. They haven't been so wise on certain other personnel decisions. Maybe they made the right decision, especially if the season needs a long-term at quarterback. If Dalton doesn't end up being the answer for now, again, Andy Dalton is the quarterback. Things around. A lot of time to get things right, as does the rest of the offense. Just a couple more questions before we get out of here. We received Joe Cook, who I see this program. He's just kind of talking and venting a little bit. Looking back to when Marvin Lewis said the offensive line would be okay. I can appreciate optimism, but not when it disregards the obvious facts. The statement I have heard over and over is that if you take a marginal line, remove 2 All-Pros, you are not likely to improve. Moving forward to the draft in April, offensive line was low priority. This is poor management of personnel. I would think it lands in the responsibility of Mike Brown, Duke Tobin, and Marvin Lewis. Looking back at the past Bengals' top picks, it's difficult to find a durable pick that has been able to complete a season healthy. John Ross, who already missed the first game and was benched in the second game. William of last year. Cedric Obwehi, who was essentially redshirted for most of his rookie year in 2015. Darquez Dennard, who was in and out of the lineup as a rookie. But obviously we know he is injured and is dealing with more injuries this week. And Dre Kirkpatrick, who had a lot of injuries early in his career as well. Athletes, they are not able to stay on the field. If I combine this with not recognizing your own personnel weak spots, I do not see success. I really have to question the model this team is using. Something is fundamentally wrong here. Well, a lot of logic there. It's hard to dispute what's thrown out there. And you look at some of the other guys in these drafts. I mean, Jake Fisher has missed a little bit of time. These other Giovanni Bernard was with Tyler Eifert in that draft. He's missed time. I mean, there's just a lot of guys, and then you throw in that same draft Marcus Hunt, who never materialized into anything for this team. There's just a lot of high picks who have either missed time or have not panned out, and that's I think every year we get excited and we say, oh, this guy's this guy, and rightfully so. I mean, you see, these are the best college players in the nation, and they should come in and do something for this team. And while the Bengals have struggled in some first round picks and some late round picks, some mid round picks are more in the 2010, 2011, 2012 type of area. I mean, 2010 was a draft that Carlos Dunlap, you had Geno Atkins. I mean, a lot of good guys in that draft. 11, you had Dalton, Green, Bowling. Obviously the team does recognize talent. I just go back to what I said a little bit earlier in the program, where when you draft guys, when you say you draft the best available, or you draft, maybe we need an offensive guard or a center or a tackle more, but a wide receiver comes available, and you had a second round in your lap in the fourth round, when you're really kind of saying, well, maybe we go center, maybe we go interior lineman here. You get the receiver instead. Well, I think, I'm not in the Bengals front office. I do the best player available. They kind of get this, excited kid with a new pet type of thing. Like, oh, I'm going to do, and they don't really know fully what to do, or maybe there's not a long-term vision for some of these guys. If you remember, they drafted Tyler Eifert, who they thought was the best player available, and they still had Jermaine Gresham, a guy they had drafted just a couple years earlier in the first round at tight end, and Eifert, who obviously seems to have more overall talent than Gresham does or did for the Bengals. He can't stay healthy, and he, in his rookie year, he sat quite a bit behind Gresham. So I don't know. I mean, injuries are kind of a freak thing. Sometimes you can see some things when you draft a player if they've had significant stuff. John Ross had some of that. But other times it just kind of happens, and you can't help it. And hopefully these guys start turning it around. And unfortunately, also this goes back to Joe's point about the draft picks and some of these guys in the first round. This goes back to a small scouting staff that we've heard so much about with the Bengals and criticized them for over the years. They in the NFL, and a lot of times their coaches are forced to do a lot of the scouting. Obviously, the coaches should be involved in that process, but you hire scouts for a reason, and you hire player personnel guys for a reason. You hire a GM for a reason, and a lot of these guys have dual roles and other things, and it's just not enough. And I don't know if that changes when Mike Brown is out of the picture. Probably not very much, because it's his family show. But the point is, when you have a small scouting staff and you have certain guys doing dual things, they have to be right really more often than other scouting staffs. These guys have to, because you have less, the probability of finding a successful is lower because you have less people on your personnel. So, some of it's bad luck, some of it's bad choices, and the other part, I don't know if the Bengals have for some players, I'm sure they do. I mean, AJ Green, no brainer, long-term plan. We need a wide receiver. He's left, and that's that. But there are other guys where, maybe he can do this, or, he can help us for a year, or maybe he's developmental for a year. It just kind of depends. But the Bengals need to – we've long talked about Marvin Lewis about being this great draft evaluator, this great talent evaluator. And it's true, but there are other times, and in big picks, that it's not true. You can go back to Keith Rivers. You can go back to – there's a lot of players that this team has whiffed in the Marvin Lewis era. So kind of is what it is. And maybe we're overrating the talent a little bit that's on this roster. We'll see. Well, guys, we're going a little long. It's Anthony Cosenza with the Orange and Black Insider. Thanks so much for tuning in. I know we started a little later than we usually do. Appreciate it for those of you who tuned in. bringing your questions in. My thanks to my co-host, Scott Schulte. Let's hope the Bengals start turning things around soon, starting this Sunday against Green Bay. If you have not been able to tune into this show live, I really urge you to do so. It's a lot of fun. A lot of Bengals fans join us live. They talk. They send us questions. We try to get those. We're on live either at Cincy Jungle or our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not yet. All of our content is also on iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, and on Cincy Jungle. And you can get in touch with us, as always, at theobinsider@gmail.com or on Twitter at Bengals OBI. Peruse the comments in our YouTube channel and all of that. So thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of the week and a great weekend. We'll see you next episode. Hopefully we'll be talking about a win this time and not another loss. Again, it's Anthony Cosenza with the Orange and Black Insider. See you soon.